Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Cyber Shadow. For the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Retro gaming has found an incredible niche when it comes to this current era of gaming. Even with the 9th generation of consoles being released, there are a plethora of retro not only games but also consoles available, and Cyber Shadow is the next thing in that long list, that growing list of retro-centric games. Cyber Shadow immediately showcases this 8-bit world that is very similar to Ninja Gaiden as you play as Shadow, a cybernetic ninja who has to be woken up from a cryogenic sleep in an effort to save his clan members from an evil doctor in a world that has been overrun by machines. And immediately as you progress through the first stage, you see this very simplistic, old school Nintendo style platformer where you of course can jump, slash enemies with your weapon of choice. In the case of Shadow, his base weapon is a sword, and try to just go throughout these stages and defeat the enemies, avoid some enemies, and of course overcome the various bosses that cap off each stage. One thing to note is there are sub-bosses halfway through each stage, and then there's the big bad boss at the end of each stage. And both of these bosses can be really harrowing and really tough depending on who they are and how well the gamer plays. There will be multiple times you will be restarting, not only when you fight a boss, but also just going throughout stages due to various hazards, due to enemy hitboxes, and due to just bad platforming if you're not paying attention. One thing about Cyber Shadow that is very different from a lot of old school NES 8-bit era side-scrolling beat-em-ups like this is the fact there is no life system. Shadow doesn't have multiple lives that whittle away due to damage and forces the player to restart a level. Instead, there is a checkpoint system that if you reach a checkpoint, that is exactly where you will restart the level at if you so happen to die. Now, this checkpoint system, of course, isn't perfect. Depending on the stage or the level, some of these checkpoints are really far away from each other, so you may die close to a checkpoint and then end up having to redo everything all over again because the checkpoint before was so far away. The checkpoints also provide something different and unique. By the time you get to stage 2, you're introduced to the fact that these checkpoints allows the player to spend the currency that is collected by defeating enemies and breaking certain objects to buy buffs and upgrades, be it a longer blade for the sword or refilling the special meter bar that allows Shadow to do things such as throw shurikens. Now, these upgrades last between each checkpoint. Cyber Shadow isn't that in-depth. It definitely harkens back to the days of yore where you just had the base game and that's it. There's no real time trials or online co-op, though there are feats that can be completed throughout various stages that most likely people will have to look up to find out what these feats are. And I must also give credit with this being a 8-bit inspired game. The soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal. It slaps no matter what you're doing. The opening menu, the title screen song, is just fantastic. Like, I want this soundtrack. Overall, Cyber Shadow of course harkens back to the days of 8-bit platformers that had players hacking and slashing their way through various areas in hopes of trying to beat the game in the most efficient way possible. There is a difficulty level that will spike very early. You will need patience, you will need understanding, you will need a good memory. But thankfully, thanks to things like the checkpoint system and just the overall fun and ability of the game, Cyber Shadow definitely warrants someone playing it if this is their style of game. If you enjoy the 8-bit retro side-scrolling platformers from many generations ago, you will thoroughly enjoy Cyber Shadow. But if it's not your cup of tea, really Cyber Shadow doesn't do anything to change your mind. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Cyber Shadow for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now if you don't mind, I have to restore myself at this checkpoint with the intent of going into battle once again. And if I'm not careful, I'll be shot down, crushed, stomped, but Shadow will prevail and make every enemy, be it a robot or a pig guy or just some goon with a big mouth, have no choice but to say, "Oh lordy."